Good afternoon, everybody. A warm welcome. My name is Marietje Schaake. I'm a fellow at Stanford University. This is a session about cybersecurity. And I couldn't think of a better set of experts to get us going. But I also looked at the list of people who've registered for this session. And each one of you has so much to say that we want to really keep the pace and get everybody involved as soon as possible. This session is hosted by BSI, the German Federal Office for Information Security. And so we have Claudia Plattner, the president, speaking on behalf of BSI. Then we'll hear from Chairman Oleksandr Potii, who is with the State Service for Special Communications and Information Protection in Ukraine, so literally in the front lines. And then last, we'll hear some introductory remarks from Richard Horne, who's the CEO of the National Cybersecurity Center of the United Kingdom. So without further ado, Claudia, can I hand over to you, please?
Thank you very much. First of all, thanks to you all for showing up at this late hour. I guess we're all pretty tired, but you made it still, so thanks a lot. It's highly appreciated. So we were thinking about this. Sorry about that. We were thinking about this panel and trying to come up with the topics that really keep us busy the most, or let's say that keep us awake at night the most. And we're very knowledgeable when it comes to protecting critical infrastructures. We've been doing that for years, really. We've established working relations with different companies, with some of the most important entities. We've all established some kind of incident management and crisis monitoring, situational reports. So we have a pretty good idea of what we're doing. We also do understand that we will have to do a lot more. So this is not really something that's surprising. We have the NIS2 directive from the European Union that we're all trying to implement. Well, some of us more than others, but at least within the EU, of course, we all have to do this, and other countries are following suit. Nonetheless, especially over the course of the last, let's say, 2 or 3 years, we have the feeling that this might not even be enough. We might have to do more than that. And maybe some of the things overlap, but nonetheless, we feel that we have to look into critical infrastructures, into preparing, not so much only from a resilience point of view, but also very much from a hybrid point of view, more from a defense point of view. And that is something, at least in Germany, we're not used to. We're not used to. We've grown up in a time where this was not much of an issue. And basically all of Germany has kind of had to adjust its value system in a way and come to terms with the fact that our world looks different than it did 5 years ago. And when we look at cybersecurity, all of a sudden it means that we do not just have to look towards resilience in terms of resilience in peace times, but in fact towards resilience possibly also in another state of crisis. And for us that means new forms of cooperation, also with our partners from the defense side. That in itself is something new. And also in terms of international cooperation, where we feel that this might even become something that we have to look at international level. And all of a sudden, those things seem a lot closer than they were before. And we've only now started to look deeper into how do we have to prepare. How do we have to prepare our railways, our transportation systems? How do we have to prepare all the electricity, water supplies? How do we have to secure all of this if it's under attack, not just from someone who wants to make money of it, but actually aims to sabotage it for purposes which go beyond profit? And this is where we are, and this is where we have started to look into. You all have heard about the O-Plan Germany, maybe. It's a well-known fact that we have to work closer together, and we're looking into this together in making sure that we are prepared. And we were thinking it might be really interesting to learn how others are doing it, and this is why we figured it would be really nice to be here on the panel. And I would love to hear from my colleagues how they see the situation, starting from where I've just basically hopefully set us off in the right direction.
Thank you so much, Claudia. Oleksandr, I would like to turn to you so we can benefit from what Ukraine has learned, what it's in the middle of, and how we can work together.
Thank you. The last time we can see that cybersecurity stay not only military component and maybe a much more task for civilian agency. And during the war, we very good understanding that only deeply cooperation between different institutions who are responsible for different aspects of cybersecurity in the internal in Ukraine, in the state, we can have success to cyber resilience and fight against cyber attack and cyber incident. Last 3 years demonstrate that cyber attack, cyber incident very quickly increase. Different type of cyber attacks, different type of cyber attacks, and different object. Especially in Ukraine today, this is government resource, energy sector, logistic, and telecom sector. But if you work together, from military guys, special service, private sector, we have a good result for fight against cyber attack. Last cyber attack in December 2024, when a hackers group broke in our national registry, 25 national registry, we very quickly detect this attack and very quickly respond. We use our common capability security service and AAA IP, and our team very quick go to object and stop escalation cyber attack, and very quickly restore a critical national register. Approximately 1 week and 1 and 2 weeks, we restore all of this registry and start give public service for our citizen. And very important, we have a good transparency information policy for citizens, give information about what we do, how long we restore a registry, and give information about how our team work in this object and so on, and to give alternative approach for realize public service. And citizens and people don't have critical emotion and social destabilization, because we give clear information about situation. This is a very important, not only for Ukraine and future for all of citizens, European Union country, for example, when we have a social resilience and ordinary people, ordinary citizens, good understand what happened in cybersphere, for example. This is a very important learn. And next, in my opinion, today start a new age, and speak about and discuss with my colleague, age to cooperation between different countries. We know in cybersecurity, information security, especially cryptography, this is a very sensitive sphere of national security of each country. But today we see that cyber threats, this is common threats for all of our country, and we need building a good cooperation between special agency, different country. Why? Because we need build a good trust relationship between policymaker, between middle management, and between technical staff, who very good understand each other. We need building a common platform for very quickly exchange information about cyber incident one country and give this information our partners, because we need to very quickly stop escalation cyber incident. You know, when Ukraine have cyber incident before the war, and not Petya, this is cyber attack use supply chain, but Ukraine have not good impact. But European country and USA have a much more financial impact after this incident than Ukraine. Why? Because Europe country and your company have a much more big capitalization and lost money. lost money after this cyber attack. Today, different countries have a good policy for fight against ransomware and another, but in my opinion, if not Petya occur today, your country have less impact, because we very quickly reaction and response to this incident to give you information about this, special telemetry, for example, and we very quickly restore and stop escalation of this incident. And next, very important aspect today, and cooperation between government and private sector. Our experience demonstrates a good result in this sphere when after the full aggression, Russian Federation, a lot of people from private sector and IT company and security company mobilization in our special troops, and very quickly increase our capability and information government resource information systems become more resilient for cyber attacks. And today we know that Ukraine information telecommunication system have a good information security system and good protect against cyber attack and cyber incident.
Okay.
So cooperation between private sector and government sector, this is very important today and very good approach for increase our resilience. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Richard.
Thank you. So a good panel has a bit of disagreement, so I might disagree with one thing that Oleksandr said in a minute. I think in the UK we have, there's quite a famous saying associated with London. We have our underground railway. When a train pulls into a station, there's this automated announcement saying, "Mind the gap," which you may have heard of and may be familiar with. And I think we have that as a saying we need to listen to in cybersecurity at the moment, because I think we have two dynamics. One is sort of the threat and exposure, and the other is our ability to defend. And if you look at the threat, it's rising fast, be it criminal threat, ransomware, nation states, sort of commercial proliferation of attack tools, you name it, the threat's rising fast. But I think the other factor in this side of the equation is our exposure. And the theme of these conferences is all about AI, how we're using technology to do more things that humans have done in the past. That means we're more dependent on technology. That means we're more exposed to the impact of a cyber attack. So where I might disagree with Oleksandr is, I think if we had maybe not Petya, but something similar that was a destructive cyber attack at scale today, I think the impact would be more. It would be greater because our exposure to technology is greater. So if an attack takes away that technology, we'll feel the impact more. On the other side, our defences and our ability to be resilient, it's kind of edging up, but not growing at the same pace that the threat and exposure is. So I think there's sort of three factors that will help close that gap. One is something that in cybersecurity, I guess in democracies, we didn't talk about much to start with, and that is the need for some kind of regulation and incentives for organisations to improve their defences. And ability to be resilient. And Claudia mentioned the NIS2 regulation in Europe. We have a similar act going through our parliament called the Cybersecurity Resilience Bill, and part of that is how we can step in more as the heat rises. So I think regulation has a role to play. Then cooperation between all parties, be it government, be it producers of technology, be it scale producers of technology, small producers of technology, all producers of technology, and users of technology. And those sort of three communities are very different and have very different perspectives, but really need to come together. And then the third part is cooperation internationally. And I think that's something where it is really encouraging that you look at a lot of the guidance, a lot of the advisories, a lot of the even attributions recently. Over the last sort of 12 to 18 months, we've seen a huge number of countries coming together and joining forces with them. And initiatives like the Counter-Ransomware Initiative, again, a huge number of countries all working together on how we can push forward defences together. So I think there are causes for hope, but we do need to mind the gap.
Thank you so much for that. All of you have touched upon the need to cooperate. All of you have mentioned the private sector. And we're also meeting here at a moment where there's, shifts in the geopolitical landscape that are quite obvious. And so I just wanted to ask each of you to reflect a little bit on what are criteria for trust. So how can you rely on companies in this space? How do you select allies? Some of you also touched upon the fact that this is inherently a tension because it's national security, guarded information. I would love to dig a little bit deeper in what are the ingredients of building those trusted relations. How do you verify, or how do you also, for example, boost the resilience on the part of the private sector to make sure there's no negligence or no unintended weaknesses there? So maybe a brief round from the panel, and then I'll be happy to see who has questions. Claudia, yeah, feel free to start.
Thank you. Yeah, as I said, we have a long-standing tradition of working together, especially with critical infrastructures. So this is very much about us trying to help them to protect themselves. So, of course, we're the supervisory body here. We have the authority to look deeply into it. But what we're mostly trying to do, first and foremost, is trying to help. As in, okay, this is how you can approach it. Doesn't always work. I mean, there's always cases where, the cooperation doesn't work. Then all of a sudden you have to be more of in an authority role than in a partner role. But nonetheless, this is usually the first order of business. So we're trying to help them, get them the right material, getting them the contacts. So we have networks. And if everything else fails and they really are attacked and they are down, then they basically can call us. Basically, they have to report that there is an incident now. And if everything goes according to plan, then one of us will call them, and the first question they will ask is, do you need help? So that's really very much what we set out to do. But as I said, we have to do more, because this is very much about individually helping a company. But these days, we have to talk about how many of the telecommunication companies can go down without us not being able to communicate anymore. And what happens if that scenario is part of a bigger scenario that's actually leading to something even worse? And the same holds for electricity, which I'm quite sure that you know a lot about. And the same holds for transportation. So it goes beyond the individual company. It actually goes to the group risks of individual sectors that we all of a sudden now have to look into. And all of a sudden, of course, it's an exaggeration. We looked into this before as well, but this is becoming more of an issue. And here, I think the fact that we have built on this relationship helps us. That there is trust, so we can work together. For the most part, that's actually well established, but now we have to take it that step further. When it comes to producers, I agree. You have to take those three parties into and get them into the same room. When it comes to producers, it's a little bit more difficult. And the world has just gotten even more difficult over the course of the last few months. So the whole question of who can you take into what kind of confidence, who can you talk to about what? Our business is a trust business. Mm-hmm. So information is only shared amongst parties that trust each other, and that trust is earned the hard way and over a long period of time. And it can be destroyed within minutes, as Warren Buffett has once said, and, well, feels like it has. But nonetheless, figuring out what products, with whom to share what kind of information is becoming more of an issue than it used to be like half a year ago. So.
Yep, understood. Oleksandr.
If you speak about trust in state between government, public sector, and private sector, we take account such aspect. If you build a very clear and very simple policy, understandable policy for all of stakeholders, not only private sector, company, academia sector, NGOs, and government, public, and so on, then we can build a good relationship and very trust each other, because we very good understand which cybersecurity policy building government sector. In Ukraine, we realize approach maybe centralized, decentralized. For example, when we from government. We give national framework, cybersecurity, information security, very clear, understandable, systematic document. But we, regulator body, SSIP, don't give control how we need to build information security and cybersecurity into your system. This is your own business. We can realize own, we can invite private company for realize cybersecurity controls and other. We only need to realize a national framework, very understandable, minimal cybersecurity controls, for example. And today we have a good result because you know the cybersecurity sphere and develop an information security system. This is a very high technological system, not good understandable, for example, owner business and managers and so on, because this is engineering discipline. When we have a clear policy how we develop requirement, second, clear government policy how we propose, realize this requirement on information system and critical infrastructure side, and we have a good, clear state control policy. After this, we can building a trust relationship between open information communication system, government open, private, and so on, and government body who play a role in the regulator body and certification body and state control body.
Thank you. That's very helpful. Richard.
So I think we're really fortunate in the cybersecurity industry as a whole and the profession, in that I think there is an inherent level of trust that we do share a mission. I came into this role in government from the private sector, where I spent most of my career, and yeah, I think the combined sense of mission that we have between sort of democratic governments and private sector is really strong, and sort of stronger than in many other professions. And I think trust gets built from working together, and it's something we've always had the mindset of, we will never scale our impact enough just by being us, just by being government. We have to work with private sector really closely, and I think across many countries there's a sort of an understanding that our kind of organisations can't be the regulator, because we need to be the ones who help and the ones who people want to work with, and so leave the regulation to those who carry the big sticks and have the lawyers, and we'll concentrate on actually doing the work and making the world more secure.
Yeah, that's helpful. I'm glad you're even talking about the R word, which it now has become, I think. Over to you. Yeah, lady in the fuchsia.
Thank you very much. I will stand up so that you see me. I'm Markéta Gregorová, European Parliament, member of the European Parliament from Czechia. And being from the Czech Republic, we were just implementing NIS2, and we got quite a big pushback from, especially, and I will mention it, Chinese lobbyists, because we were going a little bit ahead, because our telecommunication oligopoly is mostly sustained by Huawei and by China, and so there was a huge lobbying, even amendments from Chinese lobbyists. And you talked about the government and businesses cooperation. And I want to ask, and it will be the difficult question, but I think we need to ask it, what to do about this pushback, because they can offer, and I'm talking mostly about the Chinese, competitive prices. They will flew here delegations that will offer our businesses ways in, but install backdoors potentially into our critical infrastructure. And they will push back against our legislation that will try to correct this. What to do about it? Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone? Yeah, Richard.
So I think one thing that, and this was before my time in this role, but sort of the learning from my organisation is sort of in developing regulations and approaches to sort of enforcing national protection. It has to be done government and private sector providers jointly. But then you have the supply chain. And one thing that I think is really powerful in the UK, we had something called the Telecoms Security Act. So I can't remember how many years ago now, and it's sort of going through a long implementation. But that was the Act went through Parliament, but the technical standards that underpinned that Act were developed jointly by the National Cybersecurity Centre and the telecoms operators in the UK. So they were developed in a way that the telecoms operators could feel confident they can make work through their supply chain. And the technology providers were then one step removed from that standards process. And I think that's probably a really important sort of approach.
Claudia?
Of course, we were facing the same issue. As for Germany, the whole Huawei topic has been resolved by basically the government coming to an agreement with industry as towards what can be put into the systems, what cannot be put into it. So they found a solution. So far, so good. But it's been quite an issue for quite a while, and it's been discussed heavily. And as far as I'm concerned, my personal opinion is, in this particular respect, a sovereign nation must have the possibility to take sovereign security decisions, full stop. And those security decisions have a lot to do with trust. Because especially when it comes to telecommunications, I mean, those parts, those components we're talking about, it's kind of like by design that a provider actually has access to it when it comes to updates and all of these things, the configurations. It's kind of like by design. As long as this is the case, as long as we do not have a way to technically have control within our own hands, it is certainly legitimate to basically say that, well, in that case, I need to have trust into the provider. And if I don't, then it is up to a country to basically say we're not going to do this. It is a sovereign security decision by a sovereign country. And this is what we really have to keep in mind. And we need to make sure that also in our legal frameworks, we are capable of taking these kinds of decisions. We must have the possibility to take this kind of decision. At BSI, our role is very limited in this. So this is very much a personal opinion, because our role is very limited in this. We look at the technology and we basically write up what's the risk profile. And then policy decision makers, politicians have to take the decision whether they're willing to take that kind of risk or not. And that really comes down to trust. Because from a technology point of view, those things are not designed or may not be designed with backdoors. They have a front door. That's the idea of it. Right? I mean, they're designed that way. It's not a bug, it's a feature. It's supposed to be that way, so it does come down to trust.
Can I ask one follow-up question? Because digital sovereignty has been so much of a theme in the EU, for the past years. It's probably going to get more urgent soon. But when you say countries need to be able to make sovereign decisions on a scale of 1 to 10, how far up the sovereignty ladder is Germany?
Whew. Since we have the press in the room, I'm not going to say anything on any scale.
Okay.
So
Sorry. Describe the situation in beautiful words.
This is more or less the first lesson my people have told me. Never, ever answer that kind of question. No, seriously. I'd say that there's lots of work to be done. But I'm not really a huge fan of this whole sovereignty discussion in terms of technology, because it usually comes down to either make or buy. And I think there's a third dimension which is even more important, which is finish. So we have to look into the value stack, into the technical value stack, and then basically say what part of it is the one that we really want to influence. What control do we want where in the value stack? Being sovereign does not mean that you have to do everything yourself. It's not autarky. That's not the same thing. But we have to look at each and every technology and basically say, are we just going to buy it out of the shelf? Or are we going to build it ourselves 100%? Or will we take existing products and add a particular layer of control or take over parts of it that we really want to have in our own hands and then basically fill the gap or this part of the value chain that we really want to control? And so it's not so much a make or buy, it's make or buy or finish. And I think the finishing part is the most important one. And here is where you really get control and your decision-making capability back. That's my point of view.
That's very helpful. Did you want to add something, or should we go back to the room? I'm also going to look at hands. Okay, it's modest. Yes, I'll come to you.
I am agree my colleague from BSI about trust. And if you speak about a different product of different country and spec and trust, today we can review 2 points. The trust between government, different country, and technical trust of the level product. So today, for example, Ukraine don't trust anything product from Russian Federation, software, hardware, and so on. This is a sanction. This is a state of aggression, and we not allow use Russian Federation product and another company who connect this Russian Federation company and use in government sector, and not recommend use in private sector. But when country building a trust relationship between policymaker, the president, prime minister, and parliament, and when we see a good policy of the law about security, this is exclude make decision about, for example, sanction. And for this is a policy component. The technical component, a good platform for building trust in different product. In my opinion, this is a common criteria standard. And when we share this principle, this standard common criteria, and use on different level assurance, we can use different product on different level into the country. If, for example, a foreign company agree, give full complete documentation and open the access to national authority to expertise and accreditation, this product can use in, for example, in other country. For this, today exists a clear requirement for insurance level and clear requirement how we organize this process. And Ukraine today prepare a special document from Cabinet of Ministers to join this community common criteria and mutual recognition, for example, a certificate from certification laboratory from Germany, from Great Britain, and open our market, cybersecurity market to product from this country. If you good understand certification process common criteria, why not your product used in, for example, in government sector in Ukraine? And another side, if you understand that we have such security certification process for Ukraine product, your market open for Ukraine producer in cybersecurity, information security spheres. Thank you.
Thank you. Max?
Thank you. Thank you so much for the great panel. I believe the title of this panel is Emerging Cyber Threats. And as Richard already mentioned, cybercrime now, and particularly ransomware, is on par with nation-state activity, at least in most countries. Maybe Ukraine is an exception. I was wondering if, at least, from the UK and German perspective, you could elaborate on the different approaches you're taking to countering ransomware versus countering state activity. Of course, there are a couple of obvious ones in the for-profit business, but if you could elaborate on it, I would really appreciate it.
So I think the first thing I would observe is they don't need to be mutually exclusive. One of the things that's really struck me is, as the sort of the national authority, a lot of our kind of concern behind the curtain, as it were, is what a nation state's doing and what the threats might be there. But actually what we need organisations across society to do is actually protect themselves against ransomware, and that will give us 80% of what we need to protect against nation states. So I think a lot of our narrative will increasingly needs to be around what you need to do that's in your interest, your self-interest, to protect yourself against ransomware, because ransomware can stop you operating overnight. And on that point, I think there's sort of a lot of the discussion has been around defence, and I think it needs to be broadened a bit, and we need to help organizations face the reality of what happens when a disruptive attack hits, be it a nation state or be it criminal, and the challenge of recovering. And actually, whether you pay a ransom or not, recovering takes a huge amount of time. You're recovering all your data, reinstalling operating systems, going across a huge organization. It's just a logistical nightmare. So the challenge of recovery and the challenge of maintaining your operations whilst you recover, if you kind of look hard into that chasm, then it makes you realize how much you need to defend. So I think there's quite a bit around the narrative that we can do to sort of help organizations really understand what it's in their interest to do. And that will give us a lot of what it's in our interest to protect the nation. And the other thing is, I think there do need to be some policy initiatives in the UK. We've announced a consultation around should we have some kind of legislation that doesn't necessarily ban paying ransoms, but requires organizations to get permission before paying a ransom and requires notification. Now, I think, yeah, that's a consultation, and we really want views. We really want to know what people think. So if you've seen that consultation, please respond.
Thank you.
So, first of all, 100% with you. The common denominator is indeed is an attacker capable of basically attacking you and entering your systems. Ransomware continues to be the most urgent problem we have. I think that's the best way to put it. It is the most urgent problem that we have, and we continue to do so. Nothing has changed there. In fact, the numbers still go up, but it's also the one that we know. When we talk about emerging threats, we see more threats of other natures adding to this. So, of course, we have the whole topic of espionage. And then the problem is, as with ransomware, once you're in the system, you can do a lot. You can either encrypt, then we're talking ransomware. You can just lie low and get more information out, then we're talking espionage. Or you could just add 2 more clicks and then you're in the sabotage business. Making sure that you cannot enter the system is always the first thing you need to do, no matter what. But the scenarios change in terms of what the attackers want to achieve. And this is what I meant earlier when I said that we have to look at group risks. It depends on what they want to do with it. And if it's just ransomware, so just for profit, if you will, that's one thing. But if there's another motive, an ulterior motive behind it that really looks towards sabotage, and maybe on a grander scale, we're talking a whole different ballgame. So in that sense, it is changing, and these threats are more on the radar than they were a few years ago. Another whole dimension that's opening up in terms of emerging threats is everything around disinformation and everything that comes with it. And I'm not just talking about social media. I'm talking about where it comes from. Because very often, what we see in the disinformation space starts with something in the cyber space, as in hack and leak operations. So basically, someone's hacking into political party. We're having an election in 1 week, so it's very much on my mind. Into a party or into a politician's personal devices. And I keep on telling them, hey guys, don't be surprised if you find some of your emails from 7 years ago, all of a sudden right before an election, coming up again. And this very much has to do with basically protecting beforehand, before then later on gets used in some kind of disinformation. That's another emerging threat. Or we had a case in Germany where basically someone was claiming to have hacked into a system close to our election manager, or into her organization, really. We found out that most likely this has not been the case. It has just been, well, more or less a sensational message being put out there, as in, I've managed to hack into this. This was a group from Indonesia claiming to be in favor of some Russian politics and basically trying to support them. And they said they had hacked this organization, this state agency. To all our knowledge, they did not. We continue to monitor, but as far as we can see, they did not. And what that means is that this was really the cheapest cyber attack ever. I mean, seriously, they just had to claim that they did. And then there was a tabloid that picked it up and basically said, hey, look here, you know, big disaster, big panic. So I urge everyone to stay calm and let professionals look into it, and then let's see whether this is really a problem or not. Because if we don't, then we actually play into the hands of the attackers.
Right.
That's exactly what we're doing there. And so you see the whole, the variety of attacks has increased tenfold. There's so many different things you have to look into now. It's not just ransomware anymore. But the basic principle is still exactly what we've just been talking about, is making sure the attacker does not get into your system, full stop.
Thank you. We have time for one question and then quick answers here in the front row.
Good afternoon, and thank you very much, panel. My name is Andrew Thompson. I work for Munich, which is a German security company where we are providing the cybersecurity training in country to Ukrainian civil agencies on behalf of the Federal Foreign Ministry. We also here in Germany defend critical infrastructure clients who against the most sophisticated of attackers. I'd like to ask a question about your mind the gap analogy, because I see a large number of clients who are really keen to achieve a level of regulatory compliance, but aren't always in a position to be able to make the necessary investment for genuine security. And I see that gap between necessarily backward-looking regulation and the threat of the future that we have to protect ourselves from. How do you, in your esteemed positions, facilitate and incentivize the private sector to be ready for what is to come?
Thanks.
So I think that's a great question, and regulation and legislation will never move as fast as both the exposure and the threat. And I think it's incumbent on us to make sure the standards we produce are kind of they're principles based and can adapt, as well as some hard things that we need to move quickly ourselves. But it's absolutely right. If you have very specific things that need to be done, then that becomes a compliance thing, and that won't move fast enough to keep pace with the threat. So one of the other things we're looking at in the UK is corporate governance regulation and principles in there around what principles should be in place with corporate governance, which isn't specific around you must do this, must do this, must do this, but it's you must manage your risk, and you must understand your risk, and you must manage it appropriately. And I think that principles element has always got to be there.
Thank you. Some last words from Claudia and from Oleksandr. Yep.
Another aspect for your question, in my opinion, is realize a good educational and information awareness program. Because if people, different level, good understand regulation requirement, security requirement and process, these people can may realize a cyber policy, simple policy. According to this principle, in Ukraine we realize organizational technical model of cybersecurity, and basic level for this model work with people, cyber culture, cyber hygiene, cyber awareness, and so on. And and today we realize a national program in support with GIZ, when we realize a different study course for strategic leadership. This is ministry and deputy ministry and leaders of big company for understanding what is cybersecurity problem and cybersecurity requirement, for middle management, director department, chief department, and so on, and technical level staff, technical staff, for good understanding technical requirement and organize, work together with not only technical stuff into country and technical stuff between different countries. And this program have a good media support, and all of people good understand why we do it in Ukraine. And we develop a simple rules for ordinary people. We have a different channel for give information about cyber hygiene rules and so on. We building a special program for cyber culture into the agency and ministry and so on. And we building a good professional program for professionalists. Today we develop a 21 professional standard and use in ESA cybersecurity skill framework for realize this program and develop our professional program for our specialists. And according to the law, maybe in the end this February, Parliament approved this law, each agency in Ukraine must be open their position, cyber director position and staff, each agency, for organize this work into the agency. Thank you.
Thank you. Claudia.
A guy from Texas once told me that if you want to get people to change, it's kind of like trying to get them from one side of the canyon to the other side of the canyon. There's 3 ways to do that. The first one is you light a fire on their side, then they will find a way to get across. Other possibility, you put someone on the other side who's waving and saying, it's really nice here, then they will also find a way across. Third possibility, you build a bridge, and then they will just, makes it easy, they will just walk across. And he said every kind of change strategy is always a combination of the 3. So with that being said, the lighter for making the fire would be the regulation. They have to. On the other side, having someone who waves would be equivalent to basically pointing out, and we can prove that, it's a lot cheaper to invest into cybersecurity before you get hit. So much cheaper. So, and there's benefits all around. So there's a lot to be done here. And the third part is, of course, we need to help them. And this is also where we are mostly engaged in. We're trying to put together all the material that they need, tools that they can use to make it as easy as anyhow possible for them to actually find the threat by which to go by and indeed improve their own security. So it would be a combination of the 3, really.
Thank you so much. I think it's very clear that this is not just a whole of government approach that's needed, but a whole of society approach. And I think you've each touched on different aspects of that, which has been very helpful. That this is a work in progress, that is a chase that's on and that's never stopping, is also very clear. And so we wish you good luck with keeping up, and thank you all for your time and attention.